Cloud first? What is it? How is it impacting how we design and secure networks? Well, in this episode, I explain what it is to have a cloud-first strategy and how it's impacting both network engineers and security practitioners. You won't want to miss this episode, so keep listening.
Do you want a career in cybersecurity? Are you unsure how to start? Curious what it means to be a cybersecurity professional? This is the Cyber Job Hacks Podcast with Dr. Jeff Colburn. He's a 30-year industry professional and the founder of Team Caveo, a company that specializes in helping people launch cyber careers. Join us on this podcast as we explore what it means to be a cybersecurity professional and how to get started. Welcome to the show.
Are you looking to enter the cyber job market? Are you struggling to find where you can build the foundational skills required? Well, my one-on-one training may be the answer. Through the 16-week course, you'll have a one-on-one virtual session with an industry-experienced CCIE where you will learn basic routing and switching. You'll be given labs to help reinforce what you learned. Everything you need to develop the knowledge and skill set required to enter the cyber job market. This is based upon our in-person course that has helped many to launch cyber careers. If you're interested, please email courses@teamcaveo.com or click the link in the show notes. Welcome to the Cyber Job Hacks Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jeff Colburn. Well, it's our 18th episode, and I just want to thank everyone who's been listening and for the incredible feedback that we've been receiving. I'm just really glad people are finding these episodes helpful. It's always been the goal to provide that helpful information, right, that people are going to find useful, especially, we really want to try to help people launch careers, in the cyber industry. And, that the fact that people are listening to this and they're saying, hey, this is great information. This is useful information. So just really glad to hear that we're accomplishing what we set out to do. So thank you, and we appreciate you listening and for the feedback that we're receiving. So this is going to be our last episode for 2024. I'll come back in January. Going to have a new series of episodes. So just kind of concluding for the holiday season coming up. Just kind of reflecting back on the last 18 episodes, seeing how we can do things better, and what information we can give you going into 2025. So this week I want to conclude the season with another topic that has a great impact on network design and security. So last week we talked about zero trust and how that's really been a game changer in how we design networks, or how we secure networks, I should say. This week, we're going to talk about cloud first. And, cloud first is another big disruptor in the industry, both in how we design and secure networks. So, for you, those who may have never heard of cloud first, or you may have heard of the term and not sure exactly what it means, well, cloud first is exactly what it means. So, when it comes to this industry, everything's pretty descriptive. So when we say zero trust, we mean, we don't trust anything unless it's been authenticated. All right. So cloud first is exactly what it means. It's putting the cloud first. It's a strategy that organizations prioritize cloud-based solutions over on-prem solutions, meaning they look for a service in the cloud before they think about standing it up within their own facilities. So, just for an example, for years, organizations hosted their own email servers. You had, Exchange servers within a company's data centers, right? So it was an on-prem solution, on-premise solution. Now, more often than not, you go to an organization, they're using something like Microsoft Office 365, right? Their email is now hosted, right? it's within a cloud provider, right? So it's within a cloud provider's environment. It's not within the organization's environment. So now the organization doesn't have to build email servers. They don't have to maintain it. So essentially they're trusting this third party or this cloud provider to host and operate their email services, right? The same as, in the past you had IP phones at every cubicle. You had an IP phone there, and and companies had their own collaboration servers in their data center. Well, those are pretty much gone now. You don't see companies buying handsets anymore. They'll use a cloud service like Microsoft Teams or Zoom, right? So it's video and voice. So instead of picking up a handset and calling somebody, people will do a Teams call. They'll call somebody via Teams, or they'll set up a Zoom meeting, or they'll, if more often than not, they'll just send something in the chat, right? So it's that collaboration piece. Again, it's all hosted within a cloud provider's infrastructure. It's not stood up and operated by that organization, right? So cloud first has become a policy, right? So on-prem solutions are only considered if there's no cloud service available or it's cost prohibitive. So some organizations might have applications that are, that really can't be re-platformed for the cloud, so they have to stay on-prem, right? So that's so there's no way or means to take that to the cloud, or it becomes cost prohibitive. That companies start looking at the cost of putting it in the cloud. So that's the only time you'll see something go on-prem. When you have a cloud-first strategy or a cloud-first approach. And even the U.S. government has adopted this, right? With the federal cloud computing strategy, it's their policy to try to use cloud services rather than, implementing it within their own infrastructure and having to maintain it, upgrade and all that thing. They just want the service. They don't want all the headache of design, implementing, and operating. So how does this impact design, right? So you start talking about, well, we're going to start putting everything in the cloud, right? Or we're trying to move towards the cloud where rather than building our own services, we want to retain cloud services. So you hear things like SaaS, PaaS, right? Everything's as a service, and that's what cloud first is securing that as a service for your means, right? So a lot of it, most things are a SaaS, software as a service. Like, so your email, that's SaaS. Like Microsoft 365, that's a SaaS, that's software as a service. So that's what, that's that cloud first approach. So when you have this cloud first approach, that means, well, how do you get to the cloud? Well, the cloud it's hosted on the internet, right? It's most times, in the past, when you're connecting your facilities, you had private circuits. But for cloud, it's internet connectivity generally that's used to get to your cloud provider. So this puts a heavier emphasis on that internet connection, right? Organizations now have to really revisit the internet connections they have, because now internet availability is critical, right? And you need redundancy, right? So, and not just, hey, I have a couple of routers, a couple of circuits. Now organizations will start looking at, okay, well, to have real internet redundancy, I have to have multiple circuits with different internet service providers. So not only am I protecting against a circuit failure, I'm protecting against like a major outage within a service provider. So if I lose one internet service provider, I have a second one, so that I don't lose my internet connectivity. And some organizations, they'll even demand circuit path redundancy. And what that means is service providers, like, so if you have two different service providers going to the same building, they can't use that same last mile circuit or that same central office for their circuits, because what happens if there's a fiber cut going to the building and both service providers are using that same pathway, then you lost both your circuits. The same if you have a central office outage, then you lost both circuits, right? So some organizations go to a point where, hey, not only do I want disparate service providers, but I need path redundancy. You guys can't be using the same last mile or the same central office, right? Again, just that added level of protection, that added level of redundancy to ensure that they can still reach their cloud services, right? They need that access to that cloud service provider. So even larger facilities, they'll even go beyond. There's like, okay, well, we have a lot of traffic going to AWS, or we have a lot of traffic going to Azure. So what they'll do is they'll use direct connections to these cloud providers. So they're not even using their standard internet circuit, right? That DIA, that direct internet access circuit. They'll use something like a direct connect circuit for AWS, or they'll use an Azure Express route, which gives them that direct connection from their large facility to their cloud provider. And then you look at, how it's impacting the branch locations, right? So previously branch locations, they would have a circuit back to a central location. They would backhaul everything to that central location. Well, now if you start putting your applications in the cloud, now branch locations will start implementing something called local internet egress, or what we call local egress. And what that means is now everything's just going to leave that branch location and go directly out a local internet connection to that cloud provider, right? There's no more backhauling that information to central location. It makes no sense to backhaul it and then put it out on the internet. It's just, okay, I have an internet circuit locally. Now I'm just going to send it out to the cloud provider. And then you got to think about that mobile workforce, right? And that the number of remote workers, right? What are they using to connect? Even to your office, they're using the internet circuit, right? So now they're using something called a split tunnel, meaning, okay, I'm just not VPNing, right? I'm just not doing that secure connection to the company's location. Now I need to access the cloud services or the cloud applications. So now I have to split tunnel. I have that, that VPN tunnel back to the central location for things that are, bound for on-premise. And then I have that internet connection that I'm using locally to go to my cloud services. I'm not backhauling everything, right? And then you think about that data center design, right? So, data centers are now decentralized, right? Previously, you had with the on-prem data center, it was a couple of locations you had, because of redundancy or, geographical purposes, but you pretty much knew where your data centers were, and, you had, DCI circuits, right? Pretty much private circuits between your data centers. You had this, you pretty much had an idea of where your data centers were and, how to secure it, right? You could still kind of use that perimeter security that was used in the past, but now you can't, because organizations have adopted more of a hybrid multi-cloud approach, right? So you got some legacy apps that might have to remain on-prem or they haven't been shifted to the cloud yet. So now you have this on-prem data center, and then the organization might have, apps running in Azure, right? They might have apps running in AWS, because they might have apps running in Google Cloud, right? So now you have this more distributed data centers, right? So, you have, and the dispersed, right, geographically, right? So you could have things on East Coast, West Coast, Europe, Asia, right? So in their third-party environments, these are not even environments that you control. Now you might be able to provision some things depending on the type of service, but ultimately the infrastructure is not yours. It's the third parties. So now you got to think in terms of network design. How do I provide that network connectivity between the on-prem, the various cloud providers, right? So it's a huge shift to how we used to design networks, and so you have to take a lot of this in consideration because of all the different workflows that have come out of this. These new workflows, both from the remote user as well as things being hosted in the cloud. Then, of course, with the change in network design, now you got security implications, right? So you got users and applications residing outside the organizational facilities. That attack surface is much greater. So like I mentioned in the last episode on Zero Trust, right? The perimeter security model is dead. right? You can't just build a wall around your users and apps. That doesn't work anymore because your users and apps are no longer within your perimeter. They're dispersed globally. So zero trust is going to play a big part, and it's a critical part of cloud first. But I'm not going to go into a lot of it on this episode because last episode I talked about zero trust. So I would recommend that you go back and give that episode a listen because that'll really tell you about zero trust and how what it is and how to implement it. But with the cloud first approach, beyond zero trust, you got to think about the branch sites, right? So now you implemented internet circuits locally, right? So no longer backhauling traffic to a central location where it used to have all your security services centralized there. Now your security services are decentralized because now you have internet circuits at the branch. And that has to be secured. So, you could deploy firewalls and other security services or even implement security services on your WAN router. But that kind of goes against that cloud-first approach, right? So again, how do I look for cloud-based services before I look towards on-prem services? So you have something called SASE, right? It's called Secure Access Service Edge, and it's cloud-hosted security services. So instead of implementing that firewall, IDS, IPS, URL filtering, and etc. on-prem, now organizations use SASE services. So they establish an encrypted connection from the branch WAN router to the SASE provider, right? It's that internet circuit. It's that local internet circuit, right? That egress circuit. But rather than just going direct internet, it sets up a encrypted connection from the branch to the SASE provider. Then it goes through the firewalling, IDS, IPS, data loss prevention, URL filtering, and all of those other security services that you want before it's sent out to the internet, right? So all internet-bound traffic passes through that SASE provider, right? So there's that cloud-first approach, using a cloud provider, a cloud service provider to provide those security services that traditionally would have been implemented either on the WAN router or you would have had, standalone firewalls and other devices, right? So no, cloud first, SASE, right? That's the direction. That's where the industry is going, right? So beyond the branch, right? Now you got this cloud environment, right? You got your applications and your data sitting up on a cloud provider, right? You have this third party that's hosting your information, that's hosting your services. Well, that has to be secured, right? So now organizations have to adopt cloud native security services to protect that, right? And beyond that, they'll implement security services on the cloud gateway. So some places you have it's called a transit gateway. This is the entrance way into the cloud environment. So they might deploy virtual firewalls and other virtual security services to further protect their data beyond the services provided by the cloud service provider. And then encryption becomes even more important, right? Because not only do you have to think about data in transit, but how do you secure data at rest? How do I protect that data as it sits in storage, right? So now encryption becomes even more critical. And then because you have such a mobile workforce, right, remote workforce that it's no longer within your perimeter, now endpoint and identity security services have to be stronger, right? Because, the attack surface has increased, right? That these mobile users are sitting in a Starbucks or they're in a hotel, or you have remote workers, they're just working from the home using a broadband connection, right? So now that endpoint is more vulnerable, right? So now you have to think about, okay, what are these endpoint security services that have to be beefed up? And those identity services, because now you got to worry about, your workers' identities being spoofed by an attacker. So now you got to make sure that person is who they say they are, right? So then another piece is visibility and threat detection, right? So you're seeing what's truly going on in your network, identifying those threats, respond to those threats. So those are even becoming more automated, right? So not only just with, just some of the automation that we're doing manually, but also with AI, right? Because we have this increased attack surface, you have more sophisticated attacks. Now visibility and threat detection is even more critical, right? So these are the areas that we're seeing impacted by this cloud first, right? Because basically it knocked down the walls. Let's just look at it that way, right? So before you had a building, everybody's in the building, all your data's in the building, all your applications in the building, and they just built a moat around that building, right? Not like that anymore. Now your data's everywhere, right? You put in AWS, right? It's all the, it's in, US East, US West, right? It's on these third-party infrastructure that you have no control over. So that's really flipped the industry upside down, right? So it's a huge disruptor. So the traditional approaches are no longer efficient, right? Just the way we built networks, the way we secure networks, you got to make that shift with the industry. Because, like I said, you created new workflows, and these new workflows have to be protected, right? That they're not contained within the walls of the organization anymore, right? You got third parties, hosting your services. They were traditionally housed on-prem, right? So you got to take all this into consideration. What's my user to system workflow? What's my system to system workflows? How do I design for that? And how do I secure that, right? So as you're a network engineer, you got to know how to design the infrastructure that's going to support that cloud-first approach. You got to know, okay, well, we're going to use AWS, we're using Azure, we're using Google, we're using, Salesforce, we're using Microsoft 365, right? Engineer, you got to know how to design for all that. And as a security practitioner, you need to know how to properly secure it, right? You got all these new workflows, things are going outside the organization, they're being hosted by third-party providers. How do you secure it? Because a perimeter firewall is not going to cut it anymore. So for me, I think it's an exciting time to be an engineer, to be honest, because there's so much disruption in the industry right now that it's forcing us to revisit how we design, implement, and secure infrastructure, right? It's just, there's so much going on. You got cloud first, you got zero trust, AI is really, so much going on right now. The old ways of doing things, right? Even automation, like you can't be out there just typing away on command line. Now you need to know how to implement automation. So I think it's a really good time. If you're getting into the industry now, it's a really great time because you don't have to learn all the old stuff. Yeah, know the technology, but you don't have to study all those old ways of how we did things. Now there's new ways, right? With knowing automation, knowing how we build and secure a cloud-first approach, implementing zero trust, right? It's almost like a level playing ground. Yeah, you have people out there with experience, but they got experience in the old way. Now everybody's racing to get caught up on the new way of doing things. So yeah, I think it's a great time to be an engineer, great time to get into the industry. So, but as always, I hope you found this helpful. Again, I just want to thank everybody for an amazing season. Really hope you're finding all this thing useful. I appreciate the feedback that you're telling us you're finding it helpful. So we'll look forward to, coming back next year, just with more information, just trying to help you to get, kind of steer you and, what to learn and how to learn it as you try to, to get in and grow in this industry. So until next year, I just want to wish you all, a great holiday season, and I look forward to seeing you all back in January. Have a great week. Not sure if a cyber career is for you? Are you looking to get started? Are you looking to grow your career? Are you feeling stuck and don't know where to begin? My Get Good Fast coaching will help you quickly grow as a cyber professional. I can help you become a great engineer in months rather than years. It doesn't matter if you're new to the industry or mid-career. I coach you through that same process that has worked for me and my students. Go to coaching.cyberjobhacks.com to schedule your session today, or just follow the link in the show notes.
Thank you for listening to the Cyber Job Hacks Podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, please share with a friend who may be interested in becoming a cyber professional. Also, please leave a review on Apple Podcast. Your feedback is greatly appreciated, as it will shape our future episodes. Meet us here every Monday as we discuss the cyber job market and how to launch your career. Until next time, have a great week.